All right, everyone. As promised in the last video, I'm going to talk about the CRAAP credibility test. Yippee! What is the CRAAP credibility test? Well, you have to find research for your second essay, meaning that you have to go out into the ether, mostly through Galileo, I would hope, and locate sources that are valid to be used in your argument. The problem is that there's a lot of crap out there, right? Not to, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of stuff that is not valid. In fact, I'm going to link in the description to this video a URL to the Flat Earth Society. And the Flat Earth Society is a group of people that believes the Earth is flat. Now, every once in a while, I have a student that is a flat Earth enthusiast. If you are such a student, know that I am not saying this to insult you, but the Earth is not flat. All right? It's not flat. It's round. Okay? Glad you're coming with me on that. So the problem is that this website looks really legitimate. And they have come up with arguments, and they have a whole database of stuff. And if you click on the link in the description, you can find this website for yourself, and you can see like these. And I first thought that this was like a trolling group, like it was a hoax or something. No, this is real. These people really believe the Earth is flat, and they're very adamant about convincing you that it is flat. The problem is that they use a lot of dubious tactics, and we could break that down. And if we were in class together, we probably would. But for the sake of time, I would just say check it out for yourself. And don't fall for it. It's not flat. It's round. Okay. In order to believe it's flat, you have to think that NASA and everyone involved in space engineering and stuff like that, they're all lying to you. It's all a big hoax, and it's just ridiculous. Come on. Okay. So as I said in the last video, you need minimum of 2 scholarly sources. These sources must be credible, which means they must pass the CRAAP credibility test. Right? Okay. So you're going to be the easiest way to pre-screen your stuff is to use Galileo. Now, sometimes Galileo it's not my favorite resource. There are other resources available that we could be using if the school would pay for them, but they don't. So we have to use Galileo. It does have some good stuff in there. You just may have to dig around. And like I mentioned in the last video, if one search term on your topic doesn't hit, try another one, try different words. Find as many words as you can to switch it around and see what you can generate. But Galileo will sometimes yield sources too that are for like kids and stuff, like elementary school textbooks and things like that. So you want to set the search options to screen for a certain level. And if you look at the resources in Blackboard about Galileo, you can find out how to do all this. So the first letter, C, currency. How current is your piece? The closer to the present moment, the better, because especially in the fields of science and innovation and engineering, everything is always changing. So the closer you are to the present moment, the more valid your source will be. If you're writing, for example, a paper about psychology, you're going to make some argument about some psychological thing that needs to be implemented or done away with or whatever. You probably don't want to use stuff from the 1950s to try to prove your point, because they didn't have the same understanding then that we do now about psychology, and so you want to try to stay as close to the present moment as possible. That's why the first letter, C, is currency. The next one is relevance. How relevant is this? Now, if you watched the last video, I was talking about algae blooms, and I said if you couldn't find a hit on algae blooms in the Galileo search, you could change it to, say, phosphorus runoff. Now, phosphorus runoff isn't an algae bloom. It's not directly related to the topic, but it is relevant. So ask yourself, is this relevant to my argument? Can I use this somehow? It doesn't have to be directly restating your argument, but if it's a piece of evidence that is relevant that you can use, for example, some information about phosphorus runoff in a paper about algae blooms, then it's relevant. If it's not relevant, if it's only peripherally relevant, or if it's not what you thought it was after you read the abstract, which is the little blurb that comes at the top of a lot of these scholarly articles that tells you what it is without having to read the whole thing, then you can use it. But you want to make sure that it's relevant to your point. If it's only closely relevant, if it's kind of iffy, maybe you want to find something that's a little more direct. Okay. The next one is a big one. Authority. Who is the authority? What is the authority of the individual that has produced this work? Okay. Who are they? Now, if you are, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you find a charitable website that's trying to cure some disease. And there's a lot of information about this disease. Do they provide a citation to that information that is produced by a doctor? someone in the medical field? Do they just come up with this stuff? If they're positing it themselves, are these people medical doctors? Because if they're not, they can't comment on that stuff. It's like, why don't we just, like, oh, I want to be a surgeon. So let's just put a mask on me and give me a knife and let me go cutting away at, and trying to perform surgery on people. There's a reason we don't do that. I didn't go to school. I don't know the first thing about, I mean, I did go to school. I didn't go to school for medical surgery. I don't know the first thing about it. So for me to speak on it, much less perform it, would be completely outrageous. So you have to be able to establish the authority of the person that produced your work. If you're using Galileo and you're using in particular what's called a scholarly article, which is an article from a journal that is put out, typically those journals have screening methods where they make sure that whoever has written has some kind of authority. You can find lots of stuff on blogs, like people say that wheatgrass will cure cancer and stuff. Well, who is that? You don't know who that person is. They may not know anything about cancer or wheatgrass, as if there's anything to know. So you really want to make sure that you can prove the authority. You also want to be able to prove the authenticity of the text or the piece. The looks can be deceiving. There's a lot of websites out there that try to pose as being authentic, but they really aren't. So you really want to ask, like, who is this? Who are these people? Are there a lot of typos or spellings? Are there any red flags? Can you see, like, are there a bunch of advertisements for vitamin supplements and stuff all over the web page? That's usually a good indicator that you shouldn't use it. Again, most of these problems are eliminated with Galileo or with any sort of database type, academic database search engine. Sometimes people ask about Google Scholar. Be careful with Google Scholar because you're pretty much going to have to pay for all of it. It's all paywalls. That's how these journals make their money. They charge for subscriptions. And then once the subscriptions have played out over a couple of years, then they'll give them to Galileo and stuff. So there may be a bit of a time lag on this. Know that I'm not terribly strict about the time. Just try to keep it within a decade or so. And if you can't, maybe you want to think about it. And then the last one is the purpose. Why was this written? So there are a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that have an agenda, and you can name any. I don't want to single any political group out or anything like that, but you can come up with some sort of group of special interest group of people that has some political agenda they want to achieve. So if you know that about these people, then you know that their purposes might be skewed. You don't know that they're necessarily lying. But you can probably infer that if they are aligned politically with a certain cause, they are in the interest of proving that cause, and they might present things in a dishonest way, or they might use dishonest methods or whatever. So you do want to consider, why was this produced? Who made this? For example, back when they first started to determine that smoking caused cancer and was bad for you, Philip Morris, the tobacco conglomerate, paid for research to suggest otherwise. And basically, it was understood by those researchers that they were going to find what Philip Morris wanted them to find. And I don't mean to seem cynical like that, but that was a big controversy. There were things like that were done, and so it's important to understand the purpose. Is this a big tobacco company trying to protect their bread and butter by saying smoking doesn't cause cancer? Because that's dubious, and and you can figure that out by asking, what is their purpose? Well, big tobacco, what's their purpose? Right? Protecting tobacco profits. So, might want to go to somebody that has no dog in the fight, right? Somebody that's a medical person that's just studying tobacco, just interested in what it does to the human body, and oh wow, we found this and that. Okay, well, there you go. That's infinitely more credible than someone that has an investment in keeping that industry untouched. Okay, so that's generally an overview of the CRAAP credibility test. There is a slideshow. I will post the slideshow to Blackboard. The slideshow has some other things in it from another class. Just ignore the assignment and stuff at the end. But it is pretty useful to go over the CRAAP credibility test when you do your research. So, it was good talking to you. Have a wonderful afternoon.